Hello and welcome to Around the Lens, episode 109. I'm your host, David J. Murphy. I do this show almost every week with my co-hosts, Zach Roberts and Ron Hamilton. But Ron Hamilton isn't here, so that's why I said almost.
Huh.
90.
Usually that's a dig at me. And I am here, even though I am spasming in back pain, drinking my pain away with Jameson. So
I appreciate your being here so much right now, Zach. It means a lot to me
Jameson.
that you come here.
What's that?
But of course, I do the show 99.9% of the time with my co-host Zach Roberts.
I don't even about that much, but
but he's here a lot, and I definitely appreciate it. Zach, how you been? What's been up with you, man?
I mean, other than my extraordinary back pain right now, that's making my eye twitch. Not too much. Just on a continual loop down to Washington, D.C. because of all the random stuff that's going on down there. And I live in the middle of nowhere. So that's about all I do. I live in my car and get oil changes. And that's basically what I do for a living.
Aren't you looking to move? I thought you were on a move.
I am looking to move. The problem is that I need to get checks at the same time so you can put down a deposit on a place. So, you know.
That is important. I'm sure you have all that, Charlottesville money, right?
Yeah, really.
Yeah, I shouldn't have gone there. That'd be going way too early.
That we will do very soon because I got yet another one of my lists of how much I got paid from places. The new record is set that I got my wire sold one of my photos from Charlottesville for 29 cents. So yeah,
man, retire.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Whatever the 29, it's 29.29 euro, because it's in euros, so it's like 35 cents or something. But yeah, and that's not even that's what they got. I get half of that.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
Well,
just working out for you.
Oh yeah.
If only you'd been Grumpy Cat.
I know. Not
Someday.
Yeah, you guys all missed the cat and dog cast that we had here just a moment ago.
If only it had been a bunch of dogs and a bunch of dogs attacking. Anyway, but it's as opposed to white supremacists. It would have been a lot more profitable.
Absolutely. Well, I just recently did an interview with the Candid Frame, so look for me on that podcast here, hopefully in the next week or so. Great experience. I'll definitely let y'all know when that goes live. But we're here to talk about our guests, and we've got a great set of guests here tonight. Our many-time returning guest panelist from Down Under, Craig Stampley. Craig, for those who may not remember you, please tell us a little about yourself.
I'm Australian, live in Brisbane, and I take photos.
Okay, good, done. All right, and art. No, I'm just kidding.
Freelance photographer, do a bit of everything, weddings, parties, everything. Bit of real estate, models underwater. And don't laugh. I had a photo that got sent on another Instagram page. Over 14,000 likes.
Nice.
Whoa. Photos, yeah.
How much money does that translate to exactly? What's the likes to dollars ratio?
It's the exposure. It's the exposure. It's all the exposure.
Okay.
I've been trying to pay my rent, but it hasn't worked out that well.
No.
I tell you, we as photo journalists need to create a cryptocurrency called exposure. And I tell you, we will pay ourselves. We will make so much money that way.
Yep.
Anyways. And of course, our other panelist this week, it's been a little while since you've been on, but very happy to have you back. B.A. Van Sise, please tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm not from Brisbane. I'm not Australian. I do like to take pictures as well, though. No, I'm what the hell am I? Zach, I'm not a photojournalist. I make pictures of nice things. I go on adventures. I have a very enigmatic social media presence. I don't know what you'd call me.
You're a
well-coached Charlie with a very good marketing strategy. I don't know.
You overdressed is what you are.
No, I'm not. I'm going to a party in a couple days. I like to prepare early.
You got to get all the wrinkles out first.
For real, yeah.
Well, I don't know what you are, but you're well dressed and you're well lit, and that's honestly, in terms of qualifications to be on this show, that's it. That's all you need.
I'll sign out now then.
I'm in a hoodie with a bunch of IKEA lamps pointed at me. So, yeah.
I'm not much better. Yeah, you're actually well dressed there, Craig. It looks like you dressed up for the occasion. I like your shirt.
This is one of my favorite Hawaiian shirts. I have a growing collection, and this is actually one I picked up in China a few years ago.
Oh, wow. I'm really sad that Ron isn't here to look at and evaluate your Hawaiian shirt.
True. It's a Tommy Bahama one.
Oh.
Bought in the what do you call it? One of the fake stores in China.
One of the
knockoffs.
Sell the fake things.
Yeah.
So is it a Hawaiian shirt? Does a Hawaiian shirt necessarily have to be Hawaii? I mean,
oh, beautiful. No, wait, turn it back around. Let's see the
come on, give us a twirl.
There you go.
I got a cord.
Oh,
I was kind of hoping for the hilarity that would ensue, but
sorry. No. All right. Well, we do have a show to get to and visual journalism to talk about. So let's get started right off the bat with talking to BA about your African trip. Now, this is something you went on. You just came back from, right?
I got back in early December. I've been on 3 trips since, I think.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I keep busy enough. Yes, but
we'll talk about that trip and talk about all your trips, because I mean, I think it's eminently fascinating that you are just the globetrotter you are, and kind of tell us about the places you've been and the things you've done in those places.
All of them?
Starting with Africa.
For work. Don't get into the pleasure. Anyway.
So for Africa, actually, it's kind of a cool story. It was an interesting sort of a tightrope kind of story, actually, in that I was hired to essentially shoot was a wedding, but this couple, they decided instead of the money you'd usually spend on a wedding, which is like $37,000 on average in America, they said, the hell with that. We're going to take that money, and their parents are pretty active. They balk at the word philanthropist, but they've built a stadium and a hospital, some other stuff. And so they said, why don't we just take that money and donate it to causes on the ground in Tanzania? So this couple got a bunch of people together, and they all went there, and they went and visited schools and gave them gifts, and everyone gave money, and they built a kitchen for an orphanage and a bunch of other stuff. And it was a pretty cool thing. They hired me essentially to make pictures of this as a wedding photographer, but you know, I'm the kind of guy who's for a podcast well lit, and I said, well, I'm a whore, so I'm going to go and pitch this to some news outlets, and it ended up in a bunch of places. It ended up on Petapixel, the Daily Mail, a couple wedding websites that came and reached out to me and whatnot, and it was pretty interesting because I'm going to bring up your favorite fellow photojournalist, Zach, C.S. Muncie. C.S. and I have been talking about it before we went. You know, while we were thinking about just how wonderful it is to be a photojournalist, you know, with lights at a shoot. But anyway, so we were talking about sort of what the optics of this look like, and sort of how it looks as a story. You know, the obvious criticism I knew coming in is exactly what we got, which was that you're going to get a lot of people leaving nasty, you know, comments on the internet saying it's about white saviors and all sorts of kind of nasty stuff about them.
Sorry about that.
That's I appreciate it. And here's the thing: that's precisely what happened.
Oh man!
Expected it to happen is what happened. Totally fine with it. The bride's upset, and I feel bad about that. But it was an interesting sort of optics thing because it's these people who are trying to do good, who had a fundamentally visually compelling story. I mean, they're still doing stuff on the ground in Africa, so it's a combination of, you know, a love story and a tourism story and a philanthropic story kind of mixed together, but it's not purely in any of those. It actually makes it kind of hard to shoot. It's a wedding, but there's no wedding. And it's a travel story, but there's no tourism. And it's a sort of a philanthropic story, but you don't necessarily see the result set in the images. So it was kind of a very strange thing to sort of figure out, because going to a shoot, you always want to figure out, what do I kind of want this to look like? And I kind of was stumbling through it, if I'm honest, kind of blind. I landed on the ground with a vague concept of what I wanted to do. I was going to have one just totally bullshit day where we're going to go on safari and do pretty things with zebras. And the rest of it I was just making up as I went. And it looked good because they were doing something that was visually intriguing and charismatic. But it was definitely a sort of a tougher shoot to put together. It really was.
What was kind of like your biggest takeaway from it?
My biggest takeaway from it, it's going to be a cliche, but it's sort of the value of fixers, actually, because in a certain way, they didn't know it was that exactly, but they essentially had 2 fixers.
Wow.
They didn't really plan that. One of the people who was joining them was a guy who was an actual honest to God Maasai warrior. And one of the other ones was actually the guy who runs the stadium that the sports stadium for local use that they had built, and they both sort of understood the lay of the land and understood how to get things moving and make sense of it. And I've been to Africa 4 or 5 times, I think, shooting, and it definitely made all the difference in the world. The number of things that would normally be extraordinarily difficult in that corner of the world that suddenly weren't, just because somebody literally could speak the language, was infinitely helpful. So that's my big takeaway. The other big takeaway is that is just really just the joy of people being total buttholes on the internet, and how kind of delicious that is. Just getting a couple thousand angry
Amazing.
Daily Mail commenters, coming in to tell this Asian woman that she's a white savior. That was really great, because she donated all of her money to help people. However, the buttholes on the internet were kind enough to say that, the pictures do look nice. So that's the important. The pictures look great. These people are monsters, but the pictures look nice. So that's really all you need.
They're very attractive monsters.
Oh yeah.
That just shows how much more talented you are, sir.
Exactly.
The fact that you made money. But yeah, between Petapixel, Daily Mail, did you also post the stuff on YouTube and Reddit and 4chan? I mean, did you literally go for all the places on the internet?
I'll tell you, my most recent and common client these days is BuzzFeed, and they said no. Otherwise, I would have really been.
I'm actually really surprised BuzzFeed said no. I mean, it seems like a listicle right up their alley. That would generate the sort of. I mean, they want to generate controversy, and they want to not controversy per se, but conversation. With a lot of their stuff. I mean, and so
what I'd say, and it's been interesting just working with them. I was surprised they said no to it too, but the editor there who I work with, who I think you actually know as well, she's a very good editor, actually. She's an excellent editor. And so it was interesting seeing her sort of just decide.
Anytime they want to give me a call would be great, because I love their work. So, but anyway.
No, they've already seen your comments, Zach, in the basement 731.
Really?
Yeah.
A butthole commenter number 1875. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So besides the comments, has this story and this shoot led to any other other jobs or any sort of other shoots that you've done? Has this spurred on any sort of work?
Well, it's interesting. It ended up with a lot of editors contacting me, which was interesting. And that's always a good excuse to start a conversation, being like, by the way, I'm alive. I make pictures. I do, because most of my work is pitch-based. I think of a stupid idea, and then I pitch editors and say, who wants to do this?
Right.
So that was just kind of nice, just to have people who I could bring stuff to. And the weddings that I shoot, which are spectacularly unusual weddings, as a rule, it's been nice to have sort of also wedding editors who are interested in doing sort of weird things too. So it definitely brought me to editors. I wouldn't say that nobody rang me up and said, hey, we hear you did the shoot with those very attractive monsters over in Africa. We'd be interested in hiring you. But it definitely sort of increased the width of my Rolodex.
Great. It was great. And what about the other trips you were on? I'm sorry, go ahead, Zach.
Now, how did you, I am curious on the, what was the angle that you took for, because I mean, that's a wide kind of Daily Mail. I mean, they publish really weird photo stories and of all kinds. They don't need to be news stories. But also wedding, because I mean, I see that working with wedding, but how did you pitch the Daily Mail or actual news sites? Other than this is a weird thing, or
the Daily Mail came my way. Actually, I had written up copy and sent it over to BuzzFeed, who said no, and then to Petapixel. And what was, I guess, particularly interesting about it was that they weren't the first folks who I'd spoken with. Vogue knew I was doing the story, and they'd been asking me for a little while. They wanted to use one of Zach. You've seen my wedding work. I do weird weddings. They wanted to do a thing about one of my weird weddings. And I'm sorry if anyone from Vogue is listening, but I said absolutely not. Am I going to let Vogue do this story? Because I'm a little afraid of how they might run it.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm afraid of what the optics look like of it. So I was driven to sort of drive the narrative is the wrong expression for it, but just to put it in a way that I thought was perhaps a little more honest to what I thought the story was.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be about look how people look, how fabulous they look, and they did, they absolutely did. But I don't want to be about how fabulous they look. I want to be about here's this phenomenal kind of interesting thing they're doing, because weddings are so much about showing off. Hey, I've got lots of money, especially in America, and saying, hey, I want to throw away this money instead is kind of a cool thing. So I wanted to frame it as that story.
Well, actually, do the exact opposite than throwing. I would say throwing away money is throwing away money on a wedding as opposed to what they did. But yes, I say.
Zach, there's finally something that you and I agree on. Yes, that is true.
We agree on tons of things. But
so what ended up happening, though, and this is interesting sort of a media cycle thing, is that I wrote the first story, and then every other one that happened, I had almost no participation in. I would I would be contacted from an editor, and they'd say, we want to do a story about the story you did. And I'd say, great, what do you want to ask me? And then 3 hours later, there's a story up on their website, and there's been no questions. And it's funny because each one got slightly more inaccurate, but also slightly more glurgy about how great I am. So I wasn't going to issue a correction. I was like, well, listen, let me tell you, I'm not that great. So,
how did you let, or how did I'm very curious on the, like, did you have like a contract, any sort of agreement with your subjects, like allowing them to?
The subjects, what I had with them is because the bride was very hesitant about it. She was actually pretty shy.
I mean, understandably, I mean, like they seem like they have at least knowledge the fact that they don't like to be called philanthropy. I mean, like their wordage. I mean,
a little bit,
but like.
Once she saw kind of what the visual spread that I had put together looked like, which was what I showed her first, because I talked with her about it a bit in Africa. I said, listen, I think it's a story. I think it'd be interesting to place it somewhere. And then she was very hesitant. She had every relative, friend, and neighbor she'd ever had in her life jumping up and down, or you got to do this, you got to do this. And she was very hesitant. And I finally, when I told her, I said, listen, you don't have to do this. You have absolutely no obligation to do this. It's okay. It's really okay. I won't be disappointed. Yeah. Then she just sort of kind of sat with it and said, "This." She saw the spread and said, "You know what? This is going to be okay." It came down to sort of being an issue of it's sort of too self-congratulatory to say trust, but it came down to her comfort level increasing once she knew that it wasn't going to be particularly negative or be particularly harmful.
Yeah.
Now, having had a serious conversation, here's my drink from my Grimace cup.
That's actually probably worth a good amount of money. So, not
bonus of watching the broadcast on after the fact. So you did a little reverse psychology, and you got her to buy into the project. Good job.
I don't know if it was quite that Machiavellian, but I think it was more just kind of. I think I meant when I said that it was at the end of the day, for certain kinds of things, you want your subjects to be comfortable with you. You want them to feel it makes better pictures, makes a better story, but also if you're the kind of person who prides themselves on reputation, and our business reputation is everything, it is good to do it, but actually mean it as well, in a certain way.
Definitely. And what were the other trips you went on?
Oh, let's see. Since early December, I went and did a story about Christmas in Provence. Hard-hitting journalism. I did a story about
France, or where's Provence?
Southern France. Southern France. And then I did a story about Yellowstone, snowmobiling through Yellowstone in the snow. It was negative 15 degrees. And then I just shot the Idiot-A-Rod this past weekend, where a bunch of people dress up shopping carts, wear costumes, and have a race through the streets of Brooklyn while drinking.
Nice.
And on Friday, I'm headed to San Miguel de Allende, Mexico, where I'm going to be doing a portrait of Sandra Cisneros.
Wow. So are these all paid, funded projects, or are these things you're doing on your own, hoping you get paid afterwards?
No, every single one of them is something that I thought of doing, and then I pitched somebody before I went. As a general rule, I make a point to know what I'm sort of getting myself into, and whether I'm going to lose my shirt. Sometimes there's a story that's particularly interesting that you just sort of kind of run with it and just hope for the best. I have one of those come up in March. I'm doing a story in Tunisia that I'm just kind of just hoping pans out, and so far it's not. So that'll be fun when it fails.
Hey, get to go to Tunisia.
Get to go to Tunisia, yeah. I hear ISIS are lovely this time of year, and so it's
cool colors.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. The fall color is being beige, or beige, an endless sea of beige.
So talk to me about this pitching you do, because I mean, I think it's very interesting. Are you pitching folks who, I mean, these are obviously people you've worked with and have hired you in the past, right? You're not cold pitching folks who you've never met before, right?
Generally speaking, no. There's been a couple of times where you do a story and you say, "Oh, this is so perfect for X. I'm going to reach out to them and just hope this pans out." And that's worked a couple of times. I have a story I'm doing with Times right now that's kind of like that, where there's no other place more sensible to place it. So I basically just literally cold emailed an editor and said, "Hey, please do this, please. Otherwise, my life has no meaning." And they took mercy on me. But for the most part, yeah, you reach out. And my grandfather were here. Most of the podcast, that's for posterity. You know, he would point out that you throw enough shit at the wall and some of it'll stick, and that's a big part of it. Most of the time, the answer is no, and occasionally somebody goes, "Oh, that sounds crazy. Sure, I'll give you $5 for that." Or if you're Zach Roberts, I'll give you 29 euro cents for that.
So if I were like, you know, if you're talking to somebody who is trying to establish themselves, you know, is pitching the way to go? Or I mean, is that a viable means by which to kind of begin your career? Or do you have to do something else to establish yourself with a company and then pitch them ideas?
To begin, no, because here's the thing, especially if you're beginning a career, and we all had to point in a career where our work wasn't very good. And of course, that hasn't stopped some people from having very full careers anyway. But when you're starting out, because if you're pitching editors and the work that you already have stinks, or the first work you do stinks, you're dead forever. I mean, you're going to be selling patio furniture on the side of the highway in Jersey within a year. And
that's so precise.
Yeah, I wasn't.
You should drive down Jersey. That's all it is.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Photographers.
Photographers setting up shop next to Fountains of Wayne.
It sounds like not a bad fallback plan, really. You know, it's like patio.
You know what? It pays better. It pays a lot better.
That's true.
But talk me through like one of your pitches, and you know, like what's it like? You know, like you said, you have to have a good background, a good portfolio first. But I mean,
yeah,
what do you come to a pitch meeting with?
If you're pitching for the first time, it's always something akin to, I do tend to keep it pretty casual also, because if you write a big long thing and they don't read it or just say no, that hurts more. Whereas if it's like, "Hey, Jimmy, I'm going to do a story about people who paint themselves green and set themselves on fire. What do you think?" Or whatever. Then if it's sort of like you just want to give people sort of a sense that you're doing this thing. It's not going to be the end of their lives or yours if it goes right or if it goes wrong. Unless you're saying something really monstrous, you know, if you happen to have the exclusive access to Donald Trump's genitals or something, where you can do that photo story that everyone's wanting to see. You're welcome for that podcast tidbit, Dave. Then, you know, is a different matter entirely. But if you're just doing sort of more casual, or sort of you're doing feature stories or whatnot, it's easier to sort of just be conversational, approachable about it. If you're starting out, you know, I don't know how many of you are sort of Eddie Adams grads, but like the old Eddie Adams advice is always good, that, you know, it's, if you do well, people will hear about it. And so you always want to sort of start small and grow from there. And then once you have a network, I mean, I have sitting around here conveniently just too far for me to reach without, you know, ruining my lighting. I have a list of, you know, the editors who I know, who I think would not be mad at me if I sent them a pitch that wasn't in their wheelhouse.
Right.
You know, I think the second, or the last biggest part of that, is making sure that you know who you're pitching to. You know, if you know the editor, you know, I do a lot of travel work. If you know the editor at BBC Travel, don't pitch them the story about the people pushing shopping carts through Brooklyn. You know, you should know what makes sense for each editor and what they like.
Right.
In the same way, we keep bringing up the ghost of C.S. Muncie. I'm not going to bring C.S. Muncie, you know, some story about shooting food. He's not going to care. Same thing works reverse for editors. You know, if an editor has certain things they like, or if they like weird stories, which most of mine kind of do, that's what you should know and go into.
What about budget? Like, do you come to them with a budget in your mind, or, you know, when it comes to actually brass tacks and money, how do you get through that part? Is it pretty simple, or is it kind of negotiating, or
you kind of know what the rates for it look like? They're you know, or what generally speaking, you know, if you have a client who you know doesn't pay well, maybe you shouldn't be bringing them the big story you know is going to cost $1 billion. And occasionally when you have a story that's very big, like this one that I'm doing with the Times, where you say, like, it's going to cost a lot of money to do it. Here's why I think it's worth it. And you explain why you think it's worth it. You explain why this is a very expensive thing. It requires me to go to 15 different places. It requires me to do 15 different things. It requires 2 years of legwork, which is exactly what it has. You know, this requires a budget. If you're honest with that from the beginning, it makes all the difference in the world. You know, I think we all know that a lot of publications actually usually have a little more money than they pretend they do. And if you're just honest about what needs to get done, you're not surprising somebody on the back end. You're not coming in week 6 and saying, oh, by the way, I need $10,000. And they say, that's great. We're worth $8,000. You know, then the honesty is sort of key. And again, the courtesy of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Worst thing they can say is no.
Right.
You know?
Or they can say, "Oh, that's a great idea. We will take that for free. Absolutely, great. Go do it. Give it to us."
That's not something that doesn't happen. I mean, occasionally pitching and then 3 weeks later seeing it in the publication. I mean, I think it's a little less for photojournalists. But I've had a lot of friends who've had that happen to them, where they pitch a story, especially like think pieces and stuff like that, and it's like, oh, weird. One of their staffers just wrote that piece. Oh, okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Has that happened to you, BA? Somebody has stolen your work or your idea?
Oh, you betcha.
Oh, man.
You betcha.
Again, I'm sorry
about that.
So, well, last year I started doing the story for the Village Voice, and it was I was doing portraits of some of New York's remaining Holocaust survivors, and I did these sort of black and white portraits. I was trying to make them sort of elegant. These are all people who had at this point were in the year 2016, and most of them are elderly and had been children, and they'd gone through this horrible thing. And I wanted to make these elegant portraits, and I had actually pitched it to a newspaper in Germany. I said this would be an interesting story to do. It ended up being picked up. The Museum of Jewish Heritage in New York literally wrapped the museum with these images, put them 17 feet high, replaced the windows with them. Wow. And I reached out to this newspaper in Germany, and they said, we wouldn't be interested in that. And then about 2 months later, portraits of every German Holocaust survivor I think they could ever find who was still living in Germany, though why they're there, I don't know. They found them, and they sent this photographer out who made these grotesque, unflattering, almost vaguely evil-looking portraits of these people who had been through a Holocaust. You know, very clear lens, you could see every pore, the oil in their skin, very close, unattractive, unflattering images. And I didn't mind losing the money. I minded that they made an ugly story. You know, as artists, I think we always want people to see the work. If you want them to see the work, you want to see the work done right. And I think that was the bigger issue.
How do you not respond to, but
today
I guess
on the
react to
Sise edition of Around the Lens?
Yeah.
What's that?
Today on the BA Van Sise edition of Around the Lens.
All right. I know, right?
So the next question is, can you just hold up the list of editors straight up to
with their phone numbers in it?
Yeah, that'd be great.
You know how to make a good friends with editors is give out their personal information. That's the number one thing I recommend.
They love that. That's their favorite thing.
How do you respond when somebody says we won't pay you for your work? I mean, is it just a flat out okay, go F yourself, or do you try and work them up to getting paid, like convincing them why what you have to do costs money and that it's worth money?
I had one that worked. It was I don't know what came over me, but I had a client that I've done some work for in the past. I'm not going to name but they're a big national client, and they had they're a news publication. And I had sort of pitched the story to them, and they came back and they said, we don't think we have a budget to pay for this. And I'd asked for something really piddly. I think I'd asked for like $800 or something to do the whole story. It wasn't going to take me that long. It's going to be a couple days. It wasn't going to be that big deal. It wasn't going to be a lot of transit. I was actually basically going to go. In fact, Zach, you're going to recognize the story I'm talking about because you were helping me figure out how I was going to source in upstate New York on it. And I found out that the editor who said they didn't have the budget for it because they're a publicly owned organization, he got paid $1.8 million last year.
Wow.
And so I sent him an email. I said, listen, I was just looking at your filings, and I feel like you guys do have a little money for projects. And I'm only asking for $800. And wouldn't you know it, they came through.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, because, my $800 compared to his $1.8 million, he's a nice guy. He's a good guy. I don't agree with his stance on not paying me, but,
Yeah.
but that, you push back a little bit sometimes. At the end of the day, under no circumstances should you ever work for no money.
Yeah.
It's a bad precedent to set. The exposure you get doing no work for no money gets you more work for no money.
Yep.
I know a wonderful photographer in New York, really, really wonderful, who has the business sense of a potato, and he does beautiful work and never gets paid. And because he's like, oh, it's going to lead to something. It's going to lead to something. He did work. This is true. He did work for Vanity Fair, and they told him they give him exposure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Yeah. It is funny though when I think that especially within the nonprofit world, if you're dealing with them, they have this idea that I don't know if they've been trained or what it is, because I work in the nonprofit world as well. Like I help run a nonprofit, and this idea that, well, we're a nonprofit and thus we shouldn't be paying for like covering our events or, and things. And it continually surprises me because I even have to fight it at my podunk little organization where I go, no, we're literally not hiring somebody. We're just not going to do this if we can't pay them. Like that's the only option. And I've probably one of the reasons I probably don't work there full time now, but because I got into enough fights of those, because I'm like, I've heard that conversation a million times. I know what our budget is for this project. We have enough money to at least give them some money.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
but we can get it for free, Zach. Don't you get it? They'll give it to us.
Yeah. Except until we want to do a reprint of it, and the contract that we had with them didn't say it specifically. Then we have to pay them double because they're like, "Screw you! We found out you paid other people for it," which is something that happened. But anyway,
so BA, you taking any trips to Australia anytime soon?
No, sadly, I am not. Actually, wait, no, yes, I am. Yes, I am.
What?
I have a
What? Someone's coming down here?
Project that I'm not possibly going to discuss on a radio podcast. I know.
Where are you coming to in Australia? Because we're a small little island.
Yeah,
I can actually drive across to the other side to meet you.
I'm flying into Australia City, and then I'm making a left at Kangaroo Village. Is that near you?
Right. Yeah, I used to live in Kangaroo Point.
Oh, did you? That's something. Yeah.
No,
I believe it's right near the Barbie.
Wait. No, everyone's gonna stop. You actually lived in a place called Kangaroo Point?
Yeah. I had 7 months in an apartment overlooking. I could see the Story Bridge, and I could see the Brisbane River. And it was before my wife and kids moved over, so I had 7 months in a nice little apartment in Kangaroo Point.
How far away is that from the Thunderdome?
Or the
well, that's set in the future, so it's about 20 years.
Well, I'm now looking at pictures
now, actually.
Oh, beautiful.
Sorry?
I'm now looking at pictures of Kangaroo Point, and it looks lovely.
it's
and
very
I'm sorry
good.
I made fun.
No, we have lots of funny names here, half of which are Aboriginal, which I can't pronounce. But sorry, carry on. So which city are you flying into?
I don't
think you can tell us.
I know literally zero facts.
Oh, okay.
Right, well,
so that's the press.
Well, we now know one place that both of you can meet up: Kangaroo Point.
Yeah. I'm planning on going there tomorrow night to take photos of the supermoon as it comes over the CBD.
Nice.
Yeah.
By the way, BA, I was looking at the photos that you shot and the photos that the ripoff artist shot, and yeah, you could totally tell that they stole your idea.
Yes, they did, and did it just so pleasantly.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to our next topic. Unless anybody else wants, we can always jump back on this if something brings it up. But I did want to jump on to the best of 2017 lists, and I thought this was more than apropos because Zach, you were on a couple lists.
Yes, just a couple.
So talk to us a little bit about what it's like to be on a top 100 list.
There's no real difference. I mean, I haven't been able to turn it around into anything. I mean, the thing is that like most of these lists, you don't find, it's not like awards or anything like that. It's like, you don't find out about it. I had to literally, once I got on, I forget which one, Wall Street Journal. Actually, somebody sent me the fact that I was on the Wall Street Journal because it's behind a paywall. So that's the only way I knew about it. And then a couple other ones, I literally just kind of kept Googling my name and best and different combos of things. And then if the new list had come out, I control F'd and kind of then went through for friends. Stephanie Keith was on by far, who was hopefully be a guest in the coming week. She's sick today, but she was on most of those. So usually it just ended up being me going, oh, I'm not on this one. Okay, Steph, you're on this one. But yeah, no, it's the first time I think I've ever been on any of these lists, so it's very cool. Whether or not it turns into anything long term, great. If not, I mean, my mom was very excited in the fact that I was in People magazine, or that a photo of mine was in People magazine. I was not. But weirdly enough, it's from the Tiki Torch in Charlottesville that I got a half page in People magazine.
It wasn't for Sexiest Man Alive?
Well, that once again passed over for,
no. BA or Craig, have you guys ever been recognized in any top 100 lists?
Bottom 100.
Photography or otherwise?
Yeah, I think I was below that. I don't think so. No.
I haven't, no.
I think it's really cool, Zach. I mean, it's something I think we all strive to, and definitely a bucket list item at the very least.
I think I should say that I believe Time Magazine, I think I have to look at it again because Time bought a couple of the photos over the past year. But I believe the Time top 100 photo, it being in on the list, made me, it was about $9.50.
Wow.
No,
euros?
No.
So you get half of that?
$9.50. Yeah.
Yes.
So just not $9.50. I after my translation on euros, I'll have to recheck my list. But yeah, so
so let me throw it out to let's say Craig, what do you think? I mean, do you think these top 100 lists are, overrated, or you think this is like it's an awesome thing, an awesome honor?
I think if it's anything to do with photography, to be grouped in with 100 people, considering the billions of people that seem to be taking photos and calling themselves photographers, I think that's quite an achievement. If I got an email from someone saying, oh, by the way, we're including you in the top 100 of visual artists or landscape photographers or bald guys in Australia, I'd be quite pleased.
That is a revered group right there, bald guys in Australia. Because, I mean, how do you even protect the head? I mean, the sun is so strong.
A hat. You put a hat on?
Hat, okay. There you go. How about sunblock?
Like a little bit of that, yeah. Yeah, I do.
Okay, good.
I prefer a hat.
But, BA, as someone who has hair, what are your thoughts on the top 100 list?
I think if you're in the top 100 list, boy, howdy, is it a great thing to have on your website as like one of your about credentials. Yeah. I would suspect, and I bet that Zach would agree, that it leads to absolutely no more work of any kind. So I guess that's my extent of my thoughts on what it'd be like to be on one. Now, if someone wants to put me on one, I'm not going to argue against them. But I doubt that it probably leads to much more work. I think the real value of them, though, is actually not necessarily, I mean, there's value in being in one, but I think the real value is actually in looking at them. I think it's really wonderful to sort of see a lot of work that you probably haven't seen elsewhere, and also sort of just get that sort of experience in visual thinking and see what other people are doing. If you're looking at, I was like, hold on here, because I have them all up. I think I was looking at the Atlantics list.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the Atlantics list, and I was particularly impressed with. It was a different list than all the rest of them was. Just as the Atlantic is sort of a nerdier, more intellectual publication than the rest of them are. But specifically, it was such a great exercise in here's stories you've seen from angles, literally from angles you haven't.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really great as an exercise in visual thing, because there were so many things here where I went, oh, that was a really cool, clever way to do that. And I think so much of our business is about trying to just be more clever all the time.
Yeah.
There's only 7 stories in the world, and they've all been covered 7,000 times. So try and find a new way to do it. So.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, a lot of great stuff here. And talking about like impact, right? So I would say not really not for Zach, but for me and for this show, this sort of your being on this list has helped out us in that, once I saw that you were on the list, I went to every single person on that list as a photographer whose email I could find, and I invited them to be on this show. And I used the fact that you were on the list, Zach, as sort of, another way to kind of highlight, the show and what we are. And from that, I got about half a dozen folks who, will now be on the show in the future. If you look at our season 3 schedule, awesome. I've got it fleshed out to almost April. So just thanks to that. So, I mean, and plus there was actually one person who did not know they were on the list, and they did not find out until I told them they were on the list.
Wow.
So that was one of the guys.
Congratulations, Zach.
I mean, the big thing for me is like a news obsessed person. Like I consume news. I have CNN or MSNBC on at all times. I have my Twitter. I have everything. I mean, even if I'm not working on a story, like I'm obsessed with it. Is that it's surprising when first off, you miss a story and you're like, oh my God, I didn't even know that happened. So at the end of the year, it's kind of like, it's the opposite of the Oscars, because the Oscars, you have all of the films that are Oscar bait, basically, come out at the last month of the year. There's very rarely ever an Oscar award winning film that comes out in January or February. Yeah. Those are the months the films go to die. I mean, that's literally what people say. But like, there's so much, especially the last 2 years. It seems like there's been more news of big, and obviously that's we all think that, and but there's been bigger events covered better, I would say, than we've ever had in our lives, and at least that I can remember, and obviously that's technology, that's a bunch of things, but also, holy crap, 2017 was wow. Like how many disasters we have in highly populated areas, in areas where news is centered, where there's actual news organizations. I mean, how many hurricanes hit Florida and Texas, where large news operations exist, where amazing photojournalists just literally had to walk out their front door and cover this stuff. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we think about, have such amazing, it's a dark way of thinking about it, but such amazing photojournalism of September 11th is because literally every single, like 80% of the greatest photojournalists in the world at the time lived within a lens distance of the biggest news event of probably at least 5 years on either side of that event, at least. I mean, could be argued, but it's just like, it's amazing to see all these different lists and actually kind of catch, especially when there's so many lists now. And you have one defining image of every single event. I mean, you kind of have that beforehand, but at least you get to see kind of a wider spectrum with these lists too, where it's like, it's a toss up, like say Charlottesville, because I intimately know that subject. I think the defining image of Charlottesville is the car running through the crowd by the Daily Progress photographer whose name escapes me. But it's amazing the number of images that have come out for it, and kind of it gets whittled down. And there's really like 5 photographers that kind of covered it and that gets any sort of press from it. But it's great to see like other photographers from those big events, because a lot of times you'll just see that one image that comes out. That's the defining image, and then it's kind of over. But at least with these lists, it looks like people are starting at least. I didn't really pay attention to them as much in like your previous years because I just would never have anything on it. So it was it's great. It's photojournalism. I'm happy about it. But it's great to see, it's great to see a wide range of photojournalists, especially now we have with all the different wires and everything like that are people uploading to. But that's why I'm continually excited for more. I wish there'd be actually more of them. I'm surprised a couple publications didn't even put them out. But especially with the price of pulling down wire images these days, I would put out one if I had an account with somebody.
Now,
Zach, we should do our
the
Around the Lens top 100.
I mean,
if we get some Kickstarter
look
funds,
into getting an account with my wire service and see how much money I can buy photos for usage. But yeah,
Zach, we get it once a year in Brisbane, and obviously it travels the world. The Canon Press Awards, or the Press Photo Any chances of one of your photos getting in there?
I don't think I submitted because I think that's a submitted. I think those are a submitted one. I submitted for the Sony one, but yeah, yeah, that's a whole different. We're gonna do a whole award show thing later on, and when
we should do the Around the Lens Awards and give awards to our favorite photographers and photos.
As long as we ask for as much money as the Pulitzer Committee does, I'm fine with that.
Sure. I mean, BA's already dressed for an award show, so. Anywho, well, let's move on to a little gear talk here. Unless anybody else has anything they'd like to say about top 100 lists going once, twice, sold. I thought this announcement, it was a few weeks ago, but still relevant. The Mavic Air. Now, let me show you really quick if you're watching. This is my drone. It's the Mavic Pro, which is gargantuan compared to the Mavic Air, which is the new revolutionary drone from DJI. It's like, I don't know, probably a quarter the size of this thing. Anyway, so this is the latest, greatest drone from them. And whenever new drone technology comes out, especially one that I think is almost as revolutionary as this, I want to talk about because I think, drone photography, droneography, whatever you want to call it, is a blossoming career field, blossoming field. I think not everybody, it's kind of one of those things there. It's like, yeah, they're more prevalent, but they're not as prevalent as like cell phones or DSLRs or anything. So I think there's still opportunity to, potentially capitalize on the market if you're getting into it now. And I think, these type of drones just make it that much easier to get involved. And if I did not own the Mavic Pro, I would definitely consider, seriously consider getting this drone as my sort of like drone to have, just because it's so compact. And, I think that really makes it that much more just usable because you can take it anywhere. What do you guys think of this stuff? I mean, is a drone like this something you would have liked to have had in Africa, BA?
Funny you say it. I saw your show notes earlier. I was unaware of its existence. I saw it, immediately said, I must have one. As soon as I get off of our call, I'm going to get one and then bring it back to Africa. So bring me back on in a month, and I'll tell you all about it.
Okay, great.
You should reach out to Mavic and say, I would like a review copy. And
there you go.
That's a fantastic idea. That's exactly what I'm going
I'm
to
not, well, I mean, between us and you can say you're going to do a co-one for us and Photo Brigade. Yeah. And there you go. Yeah.
You should pitch DJI on a great drone story in Africa, and they will probably give you a drone.
Yeah.
As many drones as you want.
To tie the whole thing. I mean, now that it's finally at a price point that I'm vaguely interested in. But what I'm interested in is seeing. I have to go back through all the awards. Like, are there like the big images? Are awards tying in the top 100s? Is anyone getting that sort of recognition for drone work? For drone photos, and that's something, I mean, like, I haven't seen anything consciously, at least, and I'm really curious, and this is kind of a slightly off-topic thing, but I'm really curious, is that a conscious note from editors and from people who are doing awards and things? Yeah,
there were at least 3 photographs on the Atlantic that were definitely drone photos. There were aerial drone photos for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. If not, somebody got a really nice high position in certain photos.
Yeah.
I mean, there are helicopters. I mean,
what? Why am I just now hearing about this?
I mean, the reason why I got into like this field was so I could hang out of the side of a helicopter or, at high places, not to like run a little like freaking thing off of my phone. But whatever.
Well, I can tell you this one shot here of trees uprooted that was featured on the Atlantic. I know for a fact was shot with the drone. So, much like when we talked about these photo contests, we said, oh, somebody's going to get a shot with a GoPro or with a cell phone, and that's going to be like the world press photo of the year. Yeah. I very much think, you could definitely see drone shots winning, press photo contests of the year.
Yeah. Wasn't the when that plane landed on the river, Sullenberger, whatever his name was, it wasn't the photos on newspapers all iPhone photos, iPhone 3s or 4s years ago?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's a precedent for aerial or for photos from above being used in such a purpose. I mean, the great photo that everyone thinks of Muhammad Ali standing over whoever the hell he knocked out, taken from a camera that was mounted on the roof of the arena where the fight was occurring. It's the same principle. It's just a matter of a different different
yeah.
to do it.
I mean, 80% of sports photography that you see from like the Olympics and like especially football, you know, I mean, soccer or whatever we want to call it, is probably remote triggered. I mean, no one's on the field behind the goal taking photos. So
exactly. So BA is going to get one. Zach is on the fence. Craig, what's your take on this drone? You putting it in your wish list?
Oh, it's definitely on my wish list. Yeah, I've got a friend with a Mavic Pro, and I had a very, very brief flight with that and was very impressed with it. The Air, when it came out last week, it's like, ooh, that's pretty cool. I could definitely see myself eventually having one.
Yeah, it's a wonderful little piece of tech, and I'm really amazed to see where the drone technology is going. And I mean, if we're at this point now, imagine 5 years from now. I don't even know. I want the perfect drone where you just throw up in the air and it spins out and it starts, flying just like that. That's the drone I want now.
I'm just going to attach a camera to a bird and just call it a day. But I am curious. So will you be going for the red, black, or white?
Oh. Well, I'm going to go with black.
Personally, I'll go with red just because I feel like I would lose it.
I'm gonna get one. Doesn't matter. I'm gonna spray it purple and put glitter on it.
Oh,
because sometimes you want to be a little fancy,
Yeah. Bedazzle it, basically.
Yeah.
Get your drone all dressed up nice for the town.
Absolutely.
All right. So there you go, DJI. If you'd like to sponsor the show and send us all drones, we are more than willing to take them.
$3,200. That's all. It's
everybody gets a drone. You get a drone. You get a drone.
Just throwing them at people.
If Oprah gives out drones on her show, I don't know if she has a show anymore.
She gives out predator drones, actually.
I believe she gives out bees, actually. Africanized killer bees. Lovely. What she gives out on her show. All right. Well, our next two stories, and I'm kind of grouping these together because they both kind of relate to the same topic about copyright. So let's talk about these two, and kind of I'll mention both, and then we can kind of just talk about them. So Grumpy Cat, the most famous cat in the world, I think probably. Owner has made over $100 million on her cat and his image. Tartar Sauce, I should say, is the name of the cat. Anyways, this image of Grumpy Cat was used for some coffee, some cappuccino coffee, like Starbucks type of jarred cold drink cappuccino. And so it was his image was licensed, and then this company decided, hey, well, we already have the image for coffee. Why not use the image for coffee grounds? Perfect. Well, no, you kind of have to pay another licensing fee for that. And so they were taken to court and they were sued, and now they have to pay the Grumpy Cat's owners $710,000. So wouldn't that be nice to have your stuff used, and then you could sue somebody for money? And
that's
the other
$1 million Australian.
Wow, I wonder how many euros that is. But
it's anyway.
But of course, that's obviously a great win for copyrights, and I think that was enabled by the fact that obviously the owners of Grumpy Cat copyright their stuff, and if you want to copyright your stuff, you could do so before with the United States Copyright Office. Initially, it was unlimited amount of photos in one go. And now I'm kicking myself for never doing it because I could have done my entire collection. But now it's going to cost you $750 per claim to upload your stuff. And that costs, I believe, like $55 to do that. So you kind of have to be a little bit more selective of what you copyright. But if you do copyright stuff and somebody uses it, then you can sue them for a whole buttload of money. Literally $150,000 times the amount of it's used. So let's talk about copyright, guys. What do you guys think of these two stories? Do you copyright your stuff? And what do you think about the whole process of copyright, in general? Do you do this, and do you think it's the right way to go?
I'll jump in quickly and just say that I think for Australia, the photographer automatically has a copyright. We don't have to register our photos.
Well, you don't have to register in the US either. You automatically get the copyright. But if you want to get, I believe, statutory damages, then it's you have to register it. If you don't, then it's just actual damages.
Okay. All right. I'll have to double check on that for us. But I know it was different between Australia and the US. I'll have to. I'll get back to you on that one.
Okay.
But no,
Great.
I don't register anything. I'll put a little watermark on anything I sort of upload for personal use, but that's as far as I go.
Okay. BA, how about you?
How about me? I mean, yeah, I copyright everything.
But you register it like with the Copyright Office.
I do. I'm terrified of it. No,
You're
it's
terrified that if you don't register it, you'll get
Yeah.
your stuff stolen. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the thing is that we all know perfectly well that even if we hold our copyright, there's the unbelievable bear of actually trying to maintain that copyright because things show up everywhere all the time. I've had this with the poet portraits that I've done where they show up everywhere at big publications that should know better. And then you spend half your life chasing them around, trying to get treated right while also not burning a bridge, which is also a frustrating thing to deal with.
Yeah.
So it is a good and important sort of thing to maintain. You know, beyond that, you know, I think that fundamentally it's an optional service that that whose provision is not necessarily necessary. And so if it's the price that the market will bear, if the work is worth it to you, if it's your business and it's worth it to you to pay that to maintain your business, it's no different than the business liability insurance that I pay for my wedding business. Same idea. And so if you're treating it as insurance for that, it's probably worth the investment at any cost if you're the kind of person who's worried about serious copyright infringement.
Right. I mean, but does this $55 fee, now the $750 or 750 image limit, are you going to now have to be more selective about what you upload, or are you just going to eat the cost and upload everything like you would normally?
It won't affect me because I'm a pretty selective shooter. I'm a very selective editor. So it won't really affect me. I mean, I don't think that anybody should be worrying about their massive archive of thousands and thousands of pictures anyway, because most of us are in Gordon Parks. You know, if you're Gordon Parks, you know what? You've got the money, so it's fine. Well, you're dead, but you would pretend to have the money if you weren't. That's so quickly.
Too soon.
But I think that I think at the end of the day that most people don't have the kind of archive that demands that. And anybody and anybody who's still taking out a copyright on their 70,000 images is deluding themselves about the quality of those images to begin with. Maybe there's some sports shooters. Maybe there's, I don't know, some not even nature photographers. I don't even know who need an archive that big, really.
But those images, I mean, I have thanks to a friend of mine, I have a copyright lawyer now, which is the best thing in the planet. If you're a professional photographer, I recommend getting one, finding one, because they do it for you. They fight it for you, and like everything's going to take care of it, because it was literally something that I would never have done. I very rarely even ever sent takedown notices to a lot of the places. I'm just terrible at it. But what you send to them, what you send to actually get copyrighted is work that has been published. Because that's really the only I'll upload, I'll shoot something, and I always get yelled at by other photographers, but you go to my portfolio, and I put quotes around portfolio site, because it's just basically it's my online archive. Basically, I'll have your
portfolio, Zach.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's 150 images from one event or something like that. It's not a portfolio. It's literally just, place I go because I just want it in case everything burns down or whatever. I'm also really terrible at archiving personally. So that goes up there. All of those images are not copyrighted, which I probably shouldn't say out loud, because now people are, but I send the stuff that I either send to my wire or I send to the site that I shot for. Maybe it's 30 images tops from an event, and send that to them. They upload it and then they deal with it. So I assume maybe, like, if I were to go back and be like, I want to copyright all the work like previous to me getting a lawyer, then maybe 750 would be a bother, because there's like been a ton of work that's been, published, especially if I go into like my entertainment work where there's like, 30 or all my Village Voice work back when they took, 50 or 100 image galleries. So there's been a lot of work published and probably stolen or whatever. But, I mean, I don't know who this is really affecting outside of maybe, I don't know, maybe, like there's product photographers out there, but I mean, I don't know if they're copywriting their images that much, but it seems weird that there's why they're doing this. Like, that's the only thing that's like, it's one of those weird things where it's like, okay, I get there's not really necessarily a point to taking it from unlimited to X number, but why this change? I mean, is it like the government's like, oh, well, we have to cut back on our server usage or something? I mean, I don't know what the point is. And I haven't seen any explanation for it. But you know, I don't know.
The kind of idea that was sort of Sharky James, guest of the show, had sort of posited on his podcast was that essentially it's a sign of the times, in that when this was initially sort of this rule came out, you could do unlimited stuff. It was the time and era of film, right? Yeah. And so the rules are just kind of updating with the times, and with everyone being able to shoot unlimited amounts of photos, I think they're just realizing, holy cow, we're getting so many photos, and we need to do something to kind of stymie that, or sort of put a limit it. And I've never actually uploaded anything to this registration copyright stuff. Do you actually upload your photo to them, like the raw image, or are you just sort of uploading a sort of a thumbnail? Or BA, how does this actually work, this process?
You do it as a big packet down upload. I actually use the full images. So so you do it a whole big set of images at once, and it is the full image.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. You send it not as published, but the actual, like, not raw, but like
JPEGs. Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay. No, I mean, I usually just send higher quality versions of what was published. I don't know if it makes a difference, but no one has.
Step, and it doesn't make a difference. In reality, I mean, the copyright office isn't going to steal the copyright, so it doesn't really.
For now.
We live in a new America. We're going to make it great again.
There's a little asterisk somewhere there. It is all now owned by Trump Corporation.
Just get rid of those regulations.
Starting a Trump media outlet. That's what this all is about. It's a copyright grab. The one thing I will say about the Grumpy Cat is, even though I know people like mock this and be like, oh, it's millions of dollars, I am so freaking overjoyed that at least there's one person out there on the planet that has made a crap ton of money off of an image that was stolen by the internet and memed. Because I think about all of those. Yeah. You think of, that image where it's like the guy looking behind at the woman with his arm, I forget it's a stock photo. That photographer, probably it's the most widely seen image of 2017.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You think that he or she has made any money off of that? No. And once it gets out there, it's basically, good luck chasing that trail down, and when it comes to copyright, I don't even know, like, if Getty or whoever, I think it was with iStock Photo, who's going after all of that, and so that photographer probably just has to go, okay, goodbye, it's gone. I mean, the only other person that I know made any money off of the image is the little kid that has the fist up in the air, and I think he sued a couple people. But he sued people so he could afford, I think it was like open heart surgery or something. The dad did. And literally that was all where all the money went. So, Grumpy Cat, your movie was absolutely terrible. Your coffee isn't that good either, because I've actually had it.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. The actual ground drip coffee I forget where I had it. I had it somewhere, probably at one of the comic book conventions or whatever. It tastes like coffee. Wow. But yeah, so good for them. And hopefully it sets some precedent to, make people a little more, less likely, but less likely to steal memed images, but I don't really see that. That's not going to happen. Yeah. I don't see that happening. Yeah.
As long as it was on the internet, it must be free. They did license the initial image. They just didn't relicense it when they put it on a new product. And that's kind of what, they got bit. So, yeah. I was wondering, Zach.
I'm just waiting for a couple meme photographers to get together in like a class action lawsuit and basically turn around and end up owning Imgur and Reddit. Like, just turn around and own those two multi-million, if not billion-dollar corporations, because they could probably do that in a heartbeat. but yeah.
I just want to say about one more thing on this registration thing. If you have a gobs of imagery you want to register, you have till February 20th to get them to the Copyright Office before this new rule takes effect. So I may figure out some way to get them all my stuff and say, copyright the whole thing. I'll just put it on a hard drive and mail it to them.
Drag your Lightroom catalog into a folder and off it goes.
Export everything.
It won't take long. Yeah, that's right. Control C.
Copyright these baby photos my mom took. But you mentioned something interesting, Zach. You have a copyright lawyer, and please tell me, if you don't mind, how do you afford something like that? Is that just something
they take a percentage of your fee?
Okay.
So if they win, don't you know I'm independently
wealthy. So that $9.50 is paying for itself any.
No. So they sue someplace and get a $10,000 fee or whatever from I don't know. I'm trying but some website. And then I get a percentage of that.
Okay.
So yes, if I spent the time and sued and went through small claims court to do whatever, I probably get more money, but I'm literally never going to do that. So the fee that they take is by far more than worth what I'll do, and they're quite good. They've went up against, let's just say they've gone up against the Trump campaign and won. And made a good amount of money for a friend of ours. So
is this a service that you are open to because you've had an image that went as viral, or
no? It's just I mean they my assumption is I haven't had this conversation. My assumption is, but basically, is it worthwhile to represent you? Because the only way they make money is by suing people. So
that's what I mean. So like, I'm going to come to them and say, listen, I have all these family photos, and I think somebody's
they probably it's probably not worth their time. I mean, for me, because I had that, I have one viral image, they sue 5 places, it pays for it. And they're in the middle of a couple different lawsuits right now. So I think that I'll probably end up being worth their while. So
good.
And the bigger thing for me is that it's also for me, it's also as a photojournalist, it keeps I like to control my imagery a little bit more than probably some like standard wire photographers would. I mean, BA, you can probably feel, that feeling where it's just like, I don't like seeing, I'm gonna be getting into a big fight with my wire right now because I found out that they're selling images to a white supremacist site called American Renaissance. And they sold a whole bunch of photos of mine from the Tiki Torch rally and the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. And not only did they sell them for only like $4 a piece, which pisses me off, but also I just don't have any interest in allowing them to use my images. But I spent all the money and risk my life covering that story. So I'm not going to allow that. But yeah, so I mean, like, that's the other thing is that I get to, you get to actually have some weight behind you. If you actually have a law office that you can be like, hey, here's a link, go send them a cease and desist order that actually comes on a letterhead and everything like that, as opposed to, I think that there's been maybe 3 places in the history of my life or my career as a photojournalist that's actually ever responded to my cease and desist orders. And one of them was The Guardian that stole one of my images and actually printed it on the front cover of their paper. And which is how, but and I didn't charge them anywhere near enough for it. But, and then one was this, right-wing publication that they actually paid right away. And then that's literally been it. But yeah, get yourself a lawyer.
Yeah. All right. Any more thoughts on copyright? Anybody before we close the show? All right.
How many people do you think input the metadata or the copyright details in their camera so that it's already embedded? Have you guys done that? Yeah.
I do.
When I had my Canon camera, I actually did program it so that it would put my copyright information automatically in the photo when I took the picture.
Phone number, email
I highly
address, all that in
recommend
there.
Especially if you buy used cameras.
So.
I highly recommend doing it, especially when you buy cameras from friends of yours, so that if you go on my if you go to my website right now where metadata ends up showing up, you see a handful of the images, and I still have to go through and catch them. A handful of the images are by C.S. Muncy, because
he can sue you for that.
Which I'm terrified. I'm terrified now that some editor somewhere, when I sell an image to them or whatever, is going to go, wait a minute.
Actually, I've got a story about that. The very first story I did for BuzzFeed was one I started shooting almost a year earlier. And I had bought a used camera from B&H. And I did not realize about the metadata. And they came back and said, who the hell is John Nicastro? I don't know. John Nicastro. And they said, all these pictures are by John Nicastro. I'm like, I don't. Oh, wait. Let me explain, honey. No, it's not what you think. The lipstick on my collar is mine, I swear.
But that gives me a great idea. I'm going to now buy cameras, put my data into them, and return them. And so eventually I'll just wait for the money to roll in.
What you got to do is like buy a camera from like, I don't know, Tyler Hicks or something like that. And then you can be like, oh, look at these. I have all these images that I own. I can sell them.
Go. All right. Well, I think that's going to about wrap up today's show. Thank you so much, Craig and BA, for taking a little time out to chit-chat with us.
Yep.
Please, of course, tell us where we can find out more information about your work. We'll start with you, BA.
Google me.
Okay. I like it. Straight up, straight to the point.
Yeah.
Craig?
I'll go with Bing. If Google's already been taken.
Well, I mean, I guess
everyone
you don't find you then.
Dogpile me or Alta Vista me. Okay.
You can get MySpace.
DuckDuckGo.
Yeah.
All right.
Actually, go to Pornhub.com and search me there.
Yeah,
actually,
I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
All those
my least viewed
camera videos.
Least
Go to
tape over my camera.
Go to LiveLeak. That's where you can find all my work. All right. Well, again, been a great show. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Craig and BA. Really appreciate your time. Zach, anything you want to throw up before I sign off?
Nope,
anything
I'm
people
good.
need to know?
Nope, not at this
all
point.
Right. I always give you that opportunity. For Zach Roberts, I am David J. Murphy. This has been episode 109 of Around the Lens, and we are out.